He's definitely brutal. He's always savage, and you're definitely getting wrecked.
So one thing that comes along with the idea of like working too many events in too many places that you can travel to, and basically almost like testing the limits of it. Because obviously in the early days of esports, there were so few events. You couldn't overwork yourself in that way. It's just like players, where players have had to learn that, you know, kind of the brain is like a muscle as well. You can overwork it certainly and get burned out and be in a really bad spot in your career. You can do that as an esports caster, as a talent as well. Just people never had the chance to do it before. So has that taken its strain on you? I know there's a lot of people, even the nicest guys in the world who do cast it, all seem to, it takes the strain on everyone, right?
Yeah, I think so. I think that's become more apparent as of late. Like, obviously, we'll get to the incident, but there was a number of factors that went into that. I think Semler went through it quite heavily with some of the community, certainly the vocal minority, becoming a lot more vocal toward the end of his tenure in CS, or his early tenure, because potentially he's going to do a little more. I don't know. Seems like with Blast he might. And I think that definitely that's part of it. I think that in 2016 is when we were at the height of sort of our established career, if you want to call it that, on a professional level. Like, we were finally doing all the events. We were pretty confident at what we were going to be at. We were doing a lot of the finals for ESL and various other events as well, but most notably with them. And that was, again, when the camaraderie started to die. And I think it was during Pro League in that season or that year. I can't remember which one. It was the one that was kind of like midsummer. We decided we wanted to start up Dropthebomb for a new challenge, as something that was more of a creative platform. Because the other thing too is, when you're casting a lot, you kind of get pigeonholed. You kind of tend to, like, if you remember early on, I was hosting a bunch, not a bunch, but a little bit. And when Thorin, when Richard had his debacle go down with DreamHack, I kind of stepped in as the host for a while. But one of the things was that I couldn't leave Henry hanging. He wasn't sure who he was going to cast with, and admittedly, he said he didn't really want to cast with anyone else. So I went back to casting, which was a decision I think that was career defining in a lot of ways, both good and bad. But you get pigeonholed. So when you get kind of really known in one role, even when you say like, "Oh, I'll do interviews this event," they're like, "No, you're going to cast."
Right.
And as good as that is, it's kind of like you're a victim of your own success, because you start to lose creative freedom. You only become one thing. And that to me was the hardest mental aspect. I know a lot of the guys that were, I guess with me, I'm always been the kind of guy, as I said earlier in the earlier part, that I was doing multiple things at once. So to have me on the road, stuck in apartments and hotels and just casting repetitively, that was where I became very mentally strained. And then I sort of projected that onto the group in a number of ways. So before I get to that, I think one of the things we tried to do to bring some creative identity back to Henry and I as a duo is we tried to start up Dropthebomb, which we discovered was more work than it was worth. Well, I shouldn't say more work than it was worth. There was more work than we were able to put into it at the time. It was a lot of demand on both Henry and I, and having Tom Newman on. And then there's other ideas we had, Movember, etc. I just think that, like you say, like it's a lot to be around that many people all at once, all the time. And all of these things were starting to take a factor on me. And I think we were all kind of at wit's end. So mid 2016, during that Pro League time, is when I kind of hit the wall. That was it. That was sort of the end of my mental capacity for being on the road and travel and those guys. And we all started nitpicking. As casters, we'd found a way to, this was like just one incident that I think the straw that broke the camel's back, really, with the camaraderie in a lot of ways. You've done a lot of long days, and you know how we all used to have long days. Sure. As casters, one of the reasons was they would like give us the morning game, but then you take like 3 games off and then cast like the 4th game of the day or 5th game of the day, and then a game off, and then you do like the 7th game of the day. So you had to be there all day, but you're only casting 3 games. And the TOs used to think that was better because you don't have to use all your energy at once. You can take a break and then you'll be rested and be ready to go again. It actually wasn't. Sitting around is the hardest part, in my opinion. Sure. Just sitting there waiting and being like, geez, I can't rest. My mind's still going. The green room's active. There's games on still. So we decided as casters, like, let's block the schedule. So we'll do all the morning games. You do all the late games. Boom, you come in late. We go home early. We all relax. And it was the first time people were sort of leaving the green room early, which I think kind of was different. And then also that helped the casters, but not the analysts. And as analysts, there was a lot of long days, and Yanko, most notably, was the one that used to like take that out on us as if it was our fault. Like, oh, you guys did this to us by making your schedule better, which wasn't really true. But he kept like making jokes along those lines. And at some point, there's kind of like truth to his resentment in the jokes. So I made a tweet back. He was tweeting out one day like, oh, it must be nice to be a caster to Henry. And I just tweeted back like, my bubble bath and red wine don't give a fuck, because I'd already left the event, which I thought was pretty funny. And Henry thought was hilarious at the time. But it started like an actual, it made the joke sort of like real, like, oh, casters versus analysts in that way. And that was like, that became a huge argument in Cologne when we got back there, because Jason was trying to obviously take the analyst side of it and say like, oh, Matt, you can't do that. And I was like, come on, like, obviously it's a joke. You guys make them all the time. Like, why can't I do it? And we kind of got into it a little bit. And then I stormed out and left. I was like, I'm going home, because we were at a restaurant. And I was like, I'm going to the apartment. I'm not putting up with this. And then that was it. It was a downhill slope from there for the rest of the season. And that was, to me, like when the camaraderie really, really started to die. Like that whole season, like I already said, playing CS with them and being like, I don't want to play with you guys. Like again, I'm sure everyone has different moments that defined it. But like for me, that was kind of like when it was like, right, this is not going well anymore.
There's a lot in there we could get into, actually. So one part I thought that in passing we could touch on, because it's something we did talk about in the Talk to Thorin episode as well, is you referenced there the brief period where you did some hosting. So we're talking at the end of 2015, like you said, coming into early 2016. That was the Starlad that we did together. That was the one that was in Minsk. Now, most people probably don't even remember when you did this. You know, it was just a few events, and obviously it was right before you had your big period of success as a commentator, where you and Henry's duo really blew up. So most people are going to think like that wouldn't even be in your mind. Yeah. If that was like an option now, like you could do that for the odd event, and you know you didn't have to go there and be a full caster, like you go and you just a host or something. Is that something you wish you could have like kept within your repertoire that you could keep doing, or do you have to be all in on that? Do you think?
No, well, I don't know if you have to be all in. I think so. The aspect, like I said, is like you become pigeonholed. And I think a lot of people forget that, like, when I started, I was versatile. I was doing interviews. I did a little bit of stage hosting, not a lot, small stuff, admittedly. I think that would be my weakest role, to be honest, is stage hosting. And I did desk hosting, and we used to rotate into the analyst desk. Just to clarify, like you said, we weren't really blown up yet, and Henry thought like, Matt, we're on the road for success here. Like, why would we change this now? Which is why we went back to it. Like I said, Henry didn't want to work with anyone else. But originally, I was supposed to be the DreamHack host. That was the new plan. I was going to do all the DreamHacks. I had it not like a contract writing, but I had an email with confirmation saying, "You're our guy. You're going to do all these events. Here's the list." And about 3 into it, I did Leipzig. I'd done Stockholm before that. I did Leipzig. I did Minsk, which was Starladder, as you said, and there was a couple others. And that was when I realized, like, actually, I'm going to cast with Henry. Henry wants to do that. From that point of view, obviously, it worked really well. We became a really good duo. We still are a good duo. But I think that what it did is limit a lot of options. If you look at, it's hard to compare myself to Alex. I think Alex is very good at hosting. I think he's, as Carmack actually pointed out, I think he's better with facial expressions than I am, whereas my voice is, I tend to undulate a little more. So we each have our strengths. If you look at Alex's career path now, he's kind of doing everything. He's done the international. He's gotten acclaim from outside of the industry because he has more camera time, which is better for branding. And that's not something I'm necessarily bitter about, but just from a business point of view, it's really solid. I always looked at, and this may disappoint a few people maybe, I always looked when I got into esports as esports was going to be my transition period to either like racing or hockey. It just seemed the natural conclusion for career stability that someday I would branch into the TV world and go from there. And hosting would have probably been that path. There's like a couple in Canada now that have done esports stuff, and Marissa Roberto is now doing like TSN Daily because she was doing a studio show in Toronto that I actually had to turn down because I was too busy at times. Again, she's absolutely done that on her own skill, and that may not have happened to me. But the point is the opportunity was there, right? And that was kind of the road that I thought would have made more sense, because to be on television, a lot of it is the presentability. But if I'm just behind a mic all the time and not necessarily a camera, you don't get to showcase that as much. And not only that, I think that a lot of TV scouts perhaps look at esports and they listen to the commentary and you go, yeah, good voice, but I don't know what he's talking about. And I don't know if he could talk about what I want to talk about, like hockey, for example, which I could, but they don't see that, right? They're not gonna look and go, yeah, he called that eco round really well. I'll bet you he'd be great on a penalty kill. Like, they don't see the connection. So I guess in some ways I've kind of always wondered in my mind, like, if I stayed with hosting, would that have happened? Would I have transitioned? I guess from that point of view, to answer your question, is like, I would still like to host a few events here and there, even in other games, just to keep the skill active and to build a book and a portfolio, so I at least have that so I can showcase. World's Fastest Gamer was a great one I hosted last year. I thought it went really, really well. They were super happy with it. So I know I still can. It's just a matter of getting the opportunity. And I think the opportunity is best found outside of CS because we're so established into our roles now within it. So I'm not just like, I won't say I regret the decision of not staying hosting. I think that it's been, obviously, looking at where we are, Henry and I as a duo, it's been fantastic to stay together with it. It's just like, I would like to keep myself well-rounded, I guess. So yeah, every now and then I'd like to host still if it's a possibility. And in 2019, I'm kind of hoping to do some other stuff in that regard, I guess.
One thing that you referenced earlier that I wanted to go back to and get your take on, because obviously people almost never get a peek behind the scenes of the industry and, you know, how do relationships work and how does the business side work. People often have very naive opinions on how, you know, like, people in the industry can further themselves. And it's easy if you're in the industry to look at it and go, what are these idiots speculating about? But to be fair, what do they have? You know, I mean, there's no way to get live information. You can't even know, you know, which organization has money. You know, you can't read this stuff.
Yeah, just on that note, it's actually insane how many people, based on small pieces of out of context information, make broad allegations and generalizations about you. Like, some of the stuff I've read is like, wow, that's so off the mark, but like, you can't really explain it because it's private stuff in the background.
Sure.
But it's,
probably one of the best examples, mate, would be, people don't tend to do it now because I think they get it finally, maybe because they saw me go on Anders' stream and stuff, you know, but like, it used to be a famous comment that used to be on Reddit where people used to always speculate that, like, Anders really didn't like me. When when casters used to come on the desk for a segment, they would always speculate that Anders clearly hated me and that every time I said a joke, you know, he was sort of dying inside or something, which if you actually know Anders, he's probably the person who likes it the most when you banter and talk shit. Even if you talk shit to him, he loves it.
He's just like, I don't know how he's done it. He is like the most controversial dude, but he's so like innocent and smiley about it that everyone's like, oh, it's just Anders. It's so cute. Like, it's a skill. It's impressive.
It is, isn't it? You know, because I'd like to say like that, you know, I'd like to be like, oh, what a piece of shit, you know, he's just like hiding it all, but he's not. In a mad way, he wins me over. It makes me feel like it's okay to get away with just being so edgy, but simultaneously being the most liked person. I don't know how he's done it.
It's pretty insane.
Okay, but one of the things that actually that ties into what I was alluding to, though, was when you mentioned that Anders and Semler basically had the offer there so that you would have been like RoomOnFire, Sadokist, it would have been you and Moses would be the other duo. Obviously, it would be a very interesting world because for people who haven't been keeping up with the storyline, when Matt said about how when he was working with Pro League and then Anders and Semler work in the E-League, you got like kind of like a natural splitting off to where each league that someone worked with, so obviously Facet's going to have Dan and James on the final. ESL's going to have Matt and Henry on the final. E-League's going to have, if they'd have done enough events, Anders and Semler if they were still a duo. You know, this was the way naturally it was going to develop off, so that now people in theory weren't having to like battle internally for like, oh, I'm top of the scene or whatever. You know, in theory it was like whoever you worked with would probably give you this preferential treatment, right? In a world in which you'd have had two duos within one company and then the other one just works for a tournament organizer, I could make an argument right now about the level of power that group of people could have if they wanted, you know, over how they could control the rates in the industry, how they could keep down other talent, how they could make their own careers go fabulously. In fact, in that scenario, I'll give you the perfect example for you, Matt. It would be like a Formula One team. As long as the team succeeds, who cares who comes second on this one, right? Sometimes you don't care in that scenario, as long as you win the Constructors' Championship. So in this kind of a setting, right, why didn't that happen? Because clearly it was close to happening, right? The timing was almost there. And what's the impact of it not happening?
Well, I mean, the first and foremost is that the ESL deal, I went to PGL. They were already paying Moses. They weren't paying me. They were dangling it. I honestly think that I would have ended up like maybe like a Blue, where I just would have been one of their pawns rather than an actual chess piece to them. Because if they were already paying Jason, why weren't they paying me at that point? Us splitting was the biggest change in that, I think. And when that happened and I partnered with Henry, obviously that said things differently. We talked about Cluj, where even Semler was kind of hoping, obviously, within that argument. that I was going to go back with Jason when the PGL stint was all over, and that he actually, I think, maybe even envisioned Cluj as like our farewell as a duo, and things would go back to normal. Even beyond that, though, RoomOnFire was something that they pursued, and they started up and registered the business, and they did sign some talent. I think Vince was in there for a while. Vendetta was in there. Natsu. Yeah, there was quite a few people that were still. And they were all over Henry and I to join, and we were very reluctant and hesitant for a number of reasons. I was still, this was 2016 again, after Columbus was when we had our big meeting in Malmo. Actually, we sat down like a week after Columbus. I was still kind of bitter and not really on good terms yet with Semler, and not very trustworthy of him based on that early argument. So I was a bit skeptical of the reasoning behind it. And it's kind of like what you alluded to. Think of all the power that duo could have, or that business could have. And with them running it, I wasn't really convinced as to how transparent things would be on endorsement deals, or maybe we were signing up to just be a permanent number 2 at that point in time, which I wasn't super happy with. I was more of an equal opportunity guy, and I still am. I don't care if I get every final. I don't care if someone else gets every final, as long as they're not pre-negotiated and there's equal opportunity going into an event that someone who does a good job can get them. I think that's the way that it should be. So I didn't know what else was the motive, if it was really for negotiating power. Would Anders and Semler then do all the negotiating on behalf of the group? Did that mean that they could make their rates X and we would be Y as part of the package deal? I wasn't really convinced on it, and I wasn't really getting clear answers for it. And I was I think some people got annoyed with me because during the meeting I was asking very provocative questions in that way and advocating sort of that side of it because I wanted to know. And if they could answer me clearly and I trusted it, I would have said, yeah, no problem. Great. Let's do it. But we never really got there. It was almost like, we haven't thought about that yet, which now I know is actually kind of true. They weren't sure what was going to happen in that regard. And they were more chasing the content toward the end of it. They wanted to make a content team and a package team and a YouTube page, which all of that was lovely. All of that's great. I think a lot of us have now signed in with like the Story Mob now. I think a number of us have various different people that work on endorsement deals for us. Henry's got Asus, Chad's got Asus, and stuff like that. And I agree, there's branding power having us all together. I just think that at the time, I wasn't really convinced that it was that well-intended. At the time, and maybe this was my own, maybe I was wrong, I don't know how to say it. I kind of saw Anders and Semler starting to see us as a threat, that we were coming in and we were actually doing a lot of events, and we were, as I could say it earlier, even if we weren't outskilling them, we could outwork them. And part of me thought maybe this was a play for them to bid for their relevance still. Not that they were irrelevant, but to keep themselves at the top. And Henry and I kind of talked it over, and we kind of thought, like, we don't need to do this. Even if it is the best intentions in the world, we don't have to sign up for this to like preserve our career. So we hummed and hawed over it. There was a number of other factors that came in. Twitch wanted to do a bunch more retainer deals, but then YouTube came in and tore that apart. Face It signing with YouTube was the final catalyst in that, because we thought they had already lost EPL, and it didn't work out. And that to me was the end of it entirely. We just said, nope, we're not doing it. And that was a little bit later than already leaving Jason, but that was what really forced the hand of RoomOnFire to do a lot of the tri-casts with Jason, because they didn't want to leave him hanging. He did a lot of analyst work. Only now has he gone back to casting, which is what he, I think, deep down wanted to do the whole time. So it was, I don't know, like maybe for them, they might resent me partly for that, because I think more than anything, Henry just trusted my decision on it. But I don't know, I just had a gut instinct that it wasn't, and I could have been wrong. Maybe it was the greatest thing we ever could have done as a group, but I wasn't comfortable with it at the time. And maybe that all stemmed back to my relationship with Semler, and maybe somewhere deep down it was more personal than it was logical, despite me explaining my logic on it. I don't know, but we didn't get down that road, and that was kind of the end of it. That was when it was every duo for themselves at that point on.
As you say, like obviously there is just on the personal level, there's reasons that you can give as to why you wouldn't want to do this specific deal at this specific time, which is very different from the abstract of what the concept of the deal is like and grouping together, and basically what we're sort of describing is like the term union's very loaded. I would just say great terms like affinity group. You know, it's people who have the same interests. We're all casters, we're all talent. Even though in theory we compete against each other, obviously we'd all rather compete against each other for a top rate of X plus 5 as opposed to X, right? You know, that scenario. It's worth it on some level for us to work together, even though some of us directly compete with each other, casters, analysts, etc., because there's a limited amount of spaces. Do you see as a general concept, is something like that needed? Like, will the industry get stuck in a certain spot if everyone is purely against each other?
I think so. So there's the other aspect of that is like that could all go well if we're all upping our rates, but the other side of that is undercutting, right? If Henry and I say, hey, we want $2,000 a day, which is more than we get, just full disclosure, and someone comes in and goes, oh, they're doing it for $2,000, I'll do it for $1,500, and the tournament organizer goes, we like you both, but yeah, we're a little over budget, we're gonna go with you. Well, now that we get fucked. And vice versa. And so when you leave it to open rates, you have that problem is that you can always be undercut. And I know that that's a problem because in photography in my local market, when I was doing it, that was huge. Wedding photographers, like think about when digital photography came in and everyone was like, wow, I know a guy with a camera. He can do it for way less. Why would I pay you? It's like, well, you're paying me for my skill. I shouldn't have to justify that, right? Like, sure. So it's a very different thing. I will say that we are a little more transparent now. Anyone in the group asks me what my rate is, I'm happy to tell them. I know that Henry and I are pretty open with guys like Chad, who work with us all the time, Alex, Yanko. We were there. Anders, we tell him usually what we're making. Like we would like it to stay relatively consistent. And if someone feels like we're going to change our rates, which Henry and I try and do annually so that it's clear to the tournament organizers, and it's not just random, we'll let people know, which is something that Henry and I have to talk about this week, actually, going into 2019. Are we going to move our rates? Are we not? Is there other things we should be pushing for other than rates, like flights or hotel conditions? It's all stuff we talk about, but we usually still communicate that within the group because it's in our best interest. So I agree. The affinity group thing would be a fantastic idea. It's just when you go back to RoomOnFire, and like I said, I didn't know what the rates would be. So this one wasn't really a RoomOnFire issue, but it was something that they wanted to start when we're at DreamHack Vegas. We were negotiating for a star ladder, and we had Semler and I had another argument because this is the other thing we've done in the affinity group. We've taken pay cuts as a group to make sure we get the talent we want at the event because we like working with certain people. It's not to say that this isn't to load this for the public and say, oh, that means we're not going to work with certain people. This is actually going the other way and saying, hey, there's certain people we would like to bring in that you guys aren't going to hire because you can't afford. How about if we all took $100 off our rate? Collectively, that gives you enough to pay them. And we'll bring in a guy like Natsu. We'll bring in a guy like Vendetta. We'll bring in whoever, right? So we're actually going out of our way to bring more people to the events. We all did this. And then I found out from someone at Twitch who said it accidentally, like, oh yeah, but they're still getting paid, $400 more. And I was like, what do you mean? It was like, oh no, Anders and Semler are still getting paid more. And I was like, this whole thing was their idea. What do you mean they're getting paid more? And I just went straight to Twitch and Semler at once and just said, what the fuck is this? Because that was, again, that was the kind of like, we were undercutting ourselves to them. And they were suddenly not going in with the group to make sure other people could. Anyway, so that was one of the issues that it opens up both ways. But I think overall, despite camaraderie and the lack of RoomOnFire, I think that's one thing we all still do really well, or at least I'd like to think. And like I always say this to group like Harry and Higo, when those guys ask me, like the new guys, what should I be charging? I always say, here's what I charge. When I was sort of doing the amount of events you guys were doing, this is where I was. It's gone up since, you should be somewhere in this ballpark. And that way they're fair to themselves. They're fair to us. They're going to get business. They're not really hurting us because they're priced where they should be. And it all works out. So I think we're pretty open still in that regard about the rate thing.
Okay. Right. When you mention all this stuff about the RoomOnFire angle, as you say, at the time, RoomOnFire initially wasn't even just about like having a YouTube channel and presence and doing talk shows, which they developed later on. Initially, it was going to be like this group in this way, and then that other stuff was going to follow because they naturally, if you had all the casting talent, you could sell them all as a package to a company. They could pick who they need. It was a logical follow-on. Since you then obviously did something along these lines with Dropthebomb, where you did a whole bunch of content through there, and at the time, it was announced that there was going to be seasons of this, and you would try and get new sponsors and re-up for the next season, etc. Was this an attempt in some way to do something similar just with you and Henry?
No, not really, because we didn't care about signing anyone else in. So Dropthebomb for me was strictly content. That's what we wanted. I had always wanted to do more with my creative side, I guess. And this goes back to feeling pigeonholed. I wanted a way that Henry and I could do something else to showcase some of our skills. And I knew that, photography, okay, that's on me to get up to speed with, but what about doing some video stuff? I had some of the gear. We talked about it. We said, like, there's a need for a podcast. And we thought podcast was underserved. We still think it's underserved. And we wanted to do on-location podcasts. We didn't want to do just webcam stuff. There was a lot of those. We wanted to do something either in a studio or at the events, which is still something I'll touch on later, because I think there's a huge need for like a Grand Tour style tent outside the event on a Thursday night with 100 fans that you bring in and you can 1v1 get right while we do our talk show. And I think there's a huge, like, NBA lifestyle. I think that's a wicked market. Why is no one doing that? That is a huge product. And we were trying to grow towards something like that. So for me, it was just a start of, hey, let's sit, talk, show off our personalities. Again, this, if I wasn't hosting, was going to give me some camera time in a different role. Same with Henry. We could start to use that in our demo reel for potential work down the road. And that's all it was. It was a creative thing. And one of the things we wanted to do with it as well was we brought in Tom Newman, who seemed like the perfect fit. Having a Diablo was his name in COD 4, for those of you who don't know or followed COD 4. Had an esports background, knew the scene, very good videographer. Bit difficult to work with at times, and that's something we can touch on with toward the end of Drop the Bomb. But very, very good at his work. And we were going to do features similar to the Valve features to incorporate into the show, just to add another element to it. And that's all Drop the Bomb was at the start. It was not meant to compete with RoomOnFire. Now, because there's suddenly two casting duos in a RoomOnFire and a Drop the Bomb, suddenly the perception publicly was that we were against each other, which was never the case or never meant to be the case. And I think most people internally understood that, but there was always still that public perception of it.
I mean, to be fair, RoomOnFire members did go on the Drop the Bomb podcast, unless I'm mistaken.
Yeah, we even did a full feature on Semler. We did a sit down with Semler. I forget what we called it. I think it was just, I talked with Semler, or sit down with Semler, and it was the second feature we did. We did one on Ents and like the brothers, obviously Natsu and Nasu, yeah.
Purpose and
Natsu, yeah. I always get that confused because the name sounds like Natsu.
Sure.
Purpose and Nasu, and we did, the next one we did was Semler, and then we did, I think, one on Lecro after that. So there was clearly no agenda to be like, we're against them. Like, why would we use them on our show if that's the case? Because who else? I think we had someone else on. We had Anders on the podcast for a full podcast once, I think, as well. Like, So I don't know why people assumed that, but publicly, I guess people love to make narratives and drama. And I remember seeing on Reddit, like, they don't like each other, that's why they're doing it. And it's like, that's not the case.
So, as I alluded to before, where the concept was there was going to be seasons of it, which, by the way, is a good way to. I mean, it's kind of like a fashion thing, isn't it? Of like being like, this is the period where we've got some time off and we can't work on this right now, but it's not gone forever. It'll come back. What is the status of Drop the Bomb? Is Drop the Bomb gone for all intents and purposes now? Will it return one day for season X? Whatever. We're going
to get into a can of worms on this one that never went public, and I'm just going to say it at the end. So we'll get to that. The season thing was definitely our motive, and we wanted to start the first one off pretty manageable and stay within our apartment in Cologne, and then eventually in the ESL studios. We did one at the Starladder studios. We wanted to start doing more of that, where we were using the production teams available to us at events, whether that meant through sponsorship, we'd promote their event or give away tickets. And we just wanted to start making it a little bit more remote. Season 2, the plan was to start doing it at the live events rather than just at the studios we were in. And the problem was, we realized with season 1 and how busy we were that it was impossible to manage on our own. It was a lot of work to do while we were also doing events, and to keep Tom shooting at those events that we were at or sending him somewhere else. And Henry and him had to fly to Sweden on our only weekend off and film Lecro for 2 days. And it was a lot to do. I think now we're in more of a position where some of us have teams behind us, like the Story Mob, like Code Red or CSA or whoever people are signed with, that you probably could get a better budget and have people manage the sponsorships. That was the other thing. We were going out to Fnatic Gear, Darkin, we had a vape company, and getting the sponsorships ourselves, which I've done advertising sales in the past. It's not an easy thing to convince people on. So we had to under budget just to make people sign on. And then we were really scraping at the bottom of the barrel toward the end of the season. So it was a lot of work, and we were going to bring it back, and we had all the plans and best intentions to do so, but we knew that we had to increase the budget, and we were slowly working on it, but we weren't there yet. So in the meantime, we decided, let's do some white label stuff. Let's do some content where we can sell. And we pitched for the PGL Major to do all the player features. And we didn't get it because they already had hired by the time that we got around to pitching. And then we decided, well, we can do some team content. So we actually signed with SK to do the history of SK, which we did. And originally the contract stated we were going to do 8 pieces, about 5 to 10 minutes each tops. Actually, I think less than that. I think it was supposed to be like 5 to 8 minutes. Quick subjects, boom, bang them out monthly and be done with it. And we agreed to a deal for 50,000 because we had to buy a bunch of equipment. We had to pay for Tom, obviously. Now, to bring in Tom and do the 50,000, we wanted to make sure we got all the new equipment. So we bought a new camera, we bought a new stabilizer. I still have the old stabilizer over beside me. Like we had everything. We had the mics. We were ready to roll. Like we were full on. And I had perhaps overpromised and not conferred with Tom enough on the delivery dates. But he was convinced, yeah, I can do that. That's fine. We can make it happen. Instead, obviously, it was a lot of an undertaking. We should have had an editor working with him so he could just shoot, and then get the stuff off, and we could get it to put together. So anyway, I guess to be clear, we transitioned to white label. This is where it started to go downhill. We started to do the SK stuff. We weren't hitting the deliveries, the deliverables as much as we wanted. They paid us half up front for the gear. We were doing exceptional work to the point where Tom actually shot the last player majors, the player profiles for the major at Face It. He did 2, the 2 everyone liked, the ROPS one. And
Shocks, I think, was the other one, right?
Yeah, no, Shocks was the one he didn't do. He did the 2... I can't remember. Maybe it was... No, I don't think it was Shocks. It was the other one that they did. Who did they do? I can't remember. Anyway, he did those ones. People loved them. They ate them up. And obviously it was good work and it promoted him. The problem was it was outside of the parameters of what was agreed upon with SK. So they wanted 8 minutes every month. We were late at delivery, but they got 20 minutes on one of them. They got 15 on another. They got a part 1, part 2. The work was exceptional. The product we delivered was way beyond what they asked for. But because it wasn't exactly what they asked for, they were kicking up a stink. Now, admittedly, I mismanaged this. I gave Tom a little bit too much leeway. I should have been on top of it. I wanted to trust him and believe that he was getting it done. There was times when he was in India visiting family that he probably shouldn't have been. He probably should have been editing and getting things caught up to speed. But at the end of the day, I thought we still delivered on an excellent product. SK was pissed. They basically said, like, this isn't what we asked for. What the hell? And I was warned that they're difficult to deal with for business reasons beyond that. Alex Mueller can be a rather tenacious beast. But I thought, it's fine. He seems fine to me and we'll go with it. We then got into this huge debacle. We delivered everything. They were going on about, we need to talk about this. This is unacceptable. So I, out of complete fairness, said, I'll tell you what, I'll look into our budget. You guys cover our final costs. We won't make a profit. Everyone's happy. It's fine. And we can move on to the next project. That was at New York 2017, I think. Fast forward a few months, I get everything together. I get the budget done. I send them an invoice. He flips out. Jens, who's their media guy, flips out, basically says to me, you said we'd never see another invoice, and basically manipulated everything. And unfortunately, it was verbal in New York. Manipulated everything I said to saying that we would never see another invoice from Dropthebomb. How can you guys run a business like this? This is bullshit. And I said, that's not what I said. Here's the spreadsheet showing exactly what we paid for everything, all of our costs. All I'm asking for is another, I think it was like $7,000. That covers everything. I'm giving you a massive discount of, 10 plus, whatever the math is there. And be on your merry way. And I think it's like $17,000 I was deducting. And that wasn't good enough for him. He was furious with it. Unfortunately for me, it was at exactly around the time of the N-word incident. So I couldn't afford any more public backlash. So Henry was like, we should just go public. Like, these guys are ripping us $25,000 off from the original price. Like, why would we not throw them under the bus? I couldn't really afford to do so. So we kind of let it die. But the emails were so bad from them. Like, at one point I was like, you paid us $25,000 up front for the gear. Like, that was part of the agreement that you were going to help us get into this so that we could continue down the line. We could work together long period. And we had the equipment. You didn't have to worry about it. And he basically wrote back and was like, you can keep your $25,000. Oh, and don't worry, you can keep the gear as well. And I was like, no, you didn't pay for the gear. We paid for the gear. Like, it was so bad. So basically today, if I wanted to charge the full amount, SK owes us $25,000. And they are being absolutely belligerent about never, ever, ever paying that to us, because why would they? Which to them, that was one player's salary. Now, part of it was they also lost their team in that time. They went to MIBR. I think they were just being bitter. I don't know. It's completely unprofessional, and I hope no team ever signs with them ever again. If that's the way they're going to treat people that they have agreements with, fuck them. Like that. Like what's a player going to do who doesn't have any other source of income and suddenly says, sorry, you're not being paid? Like, what? You didn't win that event. We said you'd win. Like, sorry, like we still delivered a product, and it was still, I thought, a damn good product. In fact, I would say Tom went above and beyond because he felt bad at the end that he was behind schedule. And the final 2 pieces were absolutely exceptional. Some of the best work I think that's been done in CS for content. Nope, you're not getting paid. Fuck you. Like, okay. So at that point, we just decided that's enough. Like, we're not going to put up with people like this. This is too much work. I'm still in the red for that project on a personal level, to the point where we are now selling some of our gear to pay it off. And it's like, why would we bother? So I don't know. Dropthebomb still exists as an entity, and we'd love to bring it back under the right parameters. If we had a tournament organizer or an agency say, hey, we want to resurrect that, we're open to all business opportunities in that regard. But there's no way Henry and I are managing it on our own again if people are going to be completely snide and unfair to us in that way. So it's just not worth our efforts at that point if we're going to get screwed over. So that's where it is right now.
Right, a lot of people will know quite obviously through your social media that one of the things you did with a bulk of the money that you made from CS so far was buy a car. You bought this racing car that you and your dad are working with over in Canada and racing it there, and you've even shipped it around different places, right? Clearly, this was something where it's like not just something that happened in esports. You always wanted to own a car. You always wanted to be able to race in some sense. So like, set up the scene for me. Why is this significant as opposed to just someone where, a lot of people, if they made some money, might buy a slightly better car for themselves or something. Why is it different from that? Yeah,
I mean, a race car is different altogether. It's people always ask me, like, what's your dream car? My dream car is like a 3 Series BMW wagon, which was 7. It's nothing special because that's what I want to drive on the road. Our race car is different. I started in karting when I was 8. I think I did my first race at like 8 or 9, but I started driving one at like 8. My brother was already doing one before that. My dad had raced my whole life. I have my earliest memories at the track when I was like 3 years old, playing hockey in the tech booth, shooting a ball at the wall while dad was out racing. I was a little track rat. I used to run around all the time and like talk to everyone there. And went through karting. We raced with Robert Wickens, who had an unfortunate Indy accident this year, but is Canada's, I think, best driver. Did a lot of karting at a national level. My brother and I were on the national team Hurricane Racing. And then Will did some cars. Unfortunately, he rolled a car because he got tapped off corner 1, lap 3 of like his second weekend. And someone made contact. And then I rolled the second of dad's race cars when I was 17, just over driving. And that was kind of it. Our budget was shot. We couldn't afford to go back. I kind of killed the final car and I felt really bad about it. And I always said that someday when I can afford it, I'm going to build a car and we're going to go racing again. And racing it's a team sport in a lot of ways. And there's a lot of hard luck involved in it, but it's when things go right, it's so glorious. Like dancing, I always call racing like ballet with a monster. You're putting a car inch perfect in every corner and driving it on the absolute edge of adhesion and all the physics. And it's like tiptoe delicacy with a bunch of horsepower and a bunch of weight. And it's just, the feeling of a car sliding underneath you and having that car control is just, I love it. It's just so exhilarating. And I always have, like, from the first time I spun a go-kart, I was like, wow, that's really cool the way that happens. And like, you start to like play with it. And yeah, so I always said that in part to redeem myself from flipping a car when I was 17, and part because I, as a kid, really wanted to be a pro race car driver, that someday I would build a race car. And I don't know that it was like to be planned that quickly, but I was looking for something to buy as a street car anyway, and I bought the M3, and then never even saw it in person until it was done as a race car, which was not my original intent, but kind of everyone laughed and was like, that was always going to happen. So yeah, I guess it's just like a personal thing. Like it's a project, it's my car. I came up with sort of how I wanted it to drive, conferred with a guy, ISI Automotive, Steve Phillips in Nova Scotia. He had worked all around the world with Aston Martin, Porsche, BMW, different teams in IMSA, had done Le Mans, etc. as a mechanic. And he knew exactly how to build it. And we went from there. And it was, yeah, it's my baby in a lot of ways. Like it drives so well. And we pulled it out of the trailer onto the track first race weekend. And I think I was second. And everyone was like, that doesn't happen to a new car. Like that's very rare. And I was like, yeah, this car is insanely good. Like I had so much trust in it immediately. So yeah, it's just, again, it's like a personal thing. When we go to the track, it's dad and I wrenching and us doing the work, and he's on the radio. He doesn't drive it as much. He did at the beginning, but he's got bad knees. He's getting older, and it's very tight in a race car and claustrophobic, and he just didn't love the feel of it after 20 years away from it. So he's like my chief mechanic, if you will, and it's like a family thing now. And the track that we race at is very small. In fact, like I'm already a board member of the track, which is club owned. Like it's that small of a group. And it's like a family. Like everyone there knows everyone. Part of the racing is the camaraderie. I come off the track. It's not, fuck, I messed up. It's I go up to the other guy who beat me and say, hey, sick race. You killed it. Like you absolutely destroyed me. You deserve it or whatever. Or you'll go to the guys in the back and say, hey, when I came up behind you guys in the slower classes, you guys were like 3 wide. That looks super fun. Like, tell me about it. And it's just a day of having fun and really enjoying it. And for me, it was a way of releasing a lot of the travel stress. When I came home, we had another distraction and hobby we could do as a family again. And yeah, so it's just like a whole all out. It's just really fun.
Because, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong here, but people remember the timing of when this news came out that your car had been stolen, and obviously somebody even made, like, you know, local news, he reported it, etc. When this came out,
it made a lot of news. Yeah,
was during the time that we were doing PGL Krakow, right? It was the major that was obviously run by PGL. So as you said, this was actually supposed to be your time to do like a major final, etc. And this was like the company you'd worked with, obviously, so it was the ideal setup. How did this impact that news coming to you as you're in the middle of an event? So you can't even read it technically.
Well, so just to correct it, and this story, the whole story of the theft is ridiculous. It's a movie. It was on VinWiki. It's down currently because there was some other stuff the RCMP turned over. It should go back up soon, I'm hoping, because it's a big ordeal in itself. It was stolen during the qualifier, just to clarify.
Okay.
Gone for all of Cologne, and then found on the last day of Cologne, which was the day we were flying to Krakow.
Right.
So I was in Romania and my phone was blowing up. Well, like we have a group chat, and the group chat was blowing up. Like, Matt, where are you? Like, we need to call you. And I was like, oh, like they never have to call me. Like, why? We talk enough. And I was like, I'm at the hotel. And my dad goes, have you casted? Have you worked already today? And I was like, oh shit, like something's happened. And I knew it wasn't my brother because he was online. And I knew it wasn't my sister because she had shown us online within like a half an hour. And if they died or something happened to them, there wouldn't be enough time there for them to relay it to me already in Europe.
Okay.
So I was like, okay, it's not. So the next thought was that it was Jaden. It was my dog. And I was like, oh shit, like Jaden. So dad called me and he's like, are you sitting down? And I was like, fuck, here we go. Like and Jaden's like, as much as I love the car, Jaden's still like my pride and joy. Like I love Jaden. And I was like, wow, this is going to be it. And he goes, yeah, your car was stolen. And my original reaction was actually like, oh, okay. And then it kind of like sunk in and I was like, wait, what? And this was 2 months after I just sunk way more money into it than I should have, although don't regret it, but like more than the accountant was pleased with.
And I hadn't driven it that much, right? Just
drove it twice, did 2 race weekends in it at that point, and just did a filming piece for NVIDIA that's still supposed to come out soon. And it was gone. And I thought, like, you gotta be fucking kidding me. Like, no way. The whole trailer, car, and where it was parked, there's been 4 other race cars parked there for years in trailers, and mine was the one that was taken. So my original thought was, this is someone's followed on social media and popped it and like sussed it out. But then I was thinking like we weren't even planning on leaving it there. So it was just really bad luck. They actually wanted to steal a trailer because mine wasn't marked and the race car was in it. And I thought like this is going to a chop shop. This is done. If that leaves the province and hits Quebec, there's no way we ever see it again. So anyway, it turned out we saw a van on camera when they found it towing it. And the van was like a minivan towing a 7,500 pound trailer. So it was like this with a trailer behind it. And we were like, there's no way that thing either planned to take a race car or is going very far. Like that thing is going to blow up within 100 kilometers. So we started searching the radiuses and we got highway cams. The police got highway cams of which way it could have gone. And once we realized it was local, and this was actually something that like online people were like, no, this sounds so like insurance fraud, which I didn't have insurance, by the way, because insurance on a race car is not.
Maybe you can explain that because again, like as you said, the default thing. I mean, I have to say, there's a lot of 17-year-olds who didn't even own a car who had this opinion where they were like, "It'd be insured. Why would that be a problem? You'd get your money back immediately." Like, you know, why can't you just insure it in that sense?
Well, so there is theft insurance on it now, which is extremely high premium, just strictly based on what the item is and the amount of people that would potentially steal it. Like you think about how many sports cars are stolen anyway. Like Honda Civic Type Rs are the most stolen car in Canada. Porsches, like the low end ones, like I shouldn't say low end, but like Caymans, not 911s, are stolen quite a bit. So like a race car, if someone could get their hands on it, why wouldn't they steal it, right? The reason that most people don't put just theft on is because of the price of it. And the reason you don't normally insure a race car is because the premium you pay to race a race car versus the deductible and how much it is. If you put it in the wall, you're pretty much going to be buying half the car back anyway. And you shouldn't be putting it into a car into a wall every weekend to make it worth it, or you shouldn't be racing. So it's not normally worth it dollar value to put insurance on it. You just fix it and go racing again on your own. The only guys that put like insurance on it are the pro teams with like $400,000 GT3 cars who have drivers in the seats who are sponsored drivers, and those guys will pay the insurance. That way, if the driver puts it in the wall, the team's not on the hook, and the driver's not hung out. Okay. So like only pro teams. So
basically, the short version is, unless you literally think it could be stolen, in which case theft insurance is worth it. It's not worth it otherwise, because even if you like crash it a bit, you just get it fixed, you wouldn't use the insurance anywhere. Exactly.
The insurance is not worth, the amount you spend on race insurance to put it into a wall and have it fixed is not worth it, because again, you shouldn't be crashing it that much, and you're going to pay more than the car in the premium by the time you do crash it anyway. So yeah, that's why. And again, theft is not very common where I live. And a lot of people did question that down south. It was on Jalopnik, which saw, like overall, it saw like 7 or 8 million people between my Twitter, between Jalopnik, between local news, between Facebook. And ultimately, social media got the car back, which was super impressive and very cool. And it's actually a story in itself. I did offer a massive reward because I literally thought like, okay, well, I'm losing a shitload of money, or I'm losing a decent amount of money, but I'm getting my car back. So every single person in a small area where I live, like the 10K was a huge amount. So every four-wheeler was out. Like I was getting 100 messages a day being like, hey, I checked these roads, I checked these ones, didn't see it here. And we had like a map of where we thought it could be at that point. But I remember people in the States being like, same thing, like, oh, this is insurance theft. This is insurance theft. Like, how is that? And when I got it back, they were like, how's that car not ripped apart? Obviously, it was just in his friend's garage. Well, okay, if it's like California where there's like 20 racetracks and 1 million race cars, and my E46 M3 is literally the average car down there where you've got Le Mans prototypes racing for fun, then yeah, that car is going to be chopped up and it's going to be sold because there's a market. Where I live, I'm the only E46 M3 that's racing. There was 3 other E36s. It's a small track. We've got about 25 race cars over the entire Atlantic region. That car, if it stays in the Atlantic provinces, I have a list of every single part. There's nothing they could do with it. So it was either going to be torched at the bottom of a lake or come back in one piece. Because if they cut it up, we were going to find every single piece. Like, so I knew we were getting that back in some capacity. I did expect it to be completely ruined when we found it. And I was expecting that to, preparing myself for the worst, like we're going to find a ball of flames somewhere. But I was relentless for that reason. Again, if it was California, I would have cut my losses and been like, shit, it's gone. But I didn't sleep for like 3 days. We were all over it. Like we had planes in the sky. Poor dad was dealing with it because I was overseas. And I was just like, we had a group chat with guys that were looking for it. And like we were all in on it. But yeah, no insurance. And I did not want to part with it. But it made me very, very edgy at Cologne. So I remember at Cologne, there was one part where I left a water bottle on the desk, like right in front of me in the scene, in the shot. And the casting desk was right beside the analyst desk. And Alex, being cheeky, and it was actually kind of funny, came over and just like leaned in and was like, and grabbed the water bottle and moved it, just like making a joke of the fact that I left it there. And instead of me with my normal wit playing it off and being like, oh, I'm an idiot, I just looked at Alex and was like, yeah, I don't give a shit, and just kept going because I was just so on edge. And even in my mind, I was like, whoa, like, why did I just say that? Like, that was a bit harsh. And I remember Joe Miller messaging me afterwards, and we'd already had one other incident where someone swore on the broadcast that week and they weren't too thrilled with it. And Joe just messaged me and was like, listen, man, like, I don't know what that was about, but he's like, you seem really on edge this week. You need to calm down. Da, da, da. And I said to him, I said straight up, I said, Joe, my mind's at home looking for this car right now. I would rather just be like, if you're unhappy with my performance, send me home. And he was like this close to like just being like, yep, go and get out of here. And I was like, not interested at all. There's a few pictures of me as well while I'm casting where I'm just standing there with like, I look like I'm going to kill someone. Like I'm like sweaty. You could tell I haven't slept. My eyes are just 2 little laser beams. Like I was not in a good place. And the weird thing was, because we did find it, and I remember I was with Prius in Heumacht in Cologne, and I got a call. I was offline because I didn't use a lot of data then. Now I use my data when I travel, but it all hit at once when I hit the internet. And we thought it was actually on a Hells Angels property. So I saw one guy was checking out this property, which I was like, Jesus, Kevin, don't do that. And then it said they got it. And it turned out it was 30 minutes apart, but they found it somewhere else. And I remember just crying, like full on in public, like, holy shit, like it's over. And it wasn't even like, oh, yes, we got my car. It was like, thank God I can go to sleep again. Like, and I thought like that would be it. I'd be super happy and I'd be super like pumped. But I, like, for some reason got to Krakow and I was still super like bummed out and like pissed off. And like, yeah, I was super happy the car was back, but I was just so tired and like felt so violated that I just never, it was really weird. Even I was like surprised, like I'm still in a bad mood and I shouldn't be. And I just couldn't like get out of the mood that I was in for that whole event.
Even though, as you say, like actually the likelihood was you either just get the car back because it's not worth it for them to try and like sell off all the parts so it's be too easy to track, or they just have to just destroy it basically and maybe never get it back, or it's a burning wreck or something. If
you saw my build sheet, I have literally like the thing is stripped down to a like bare chassis and then rebuilt as a race car. So it's like, it looks like an M3, but it's very different. Right. So I have every single screw like itemized. I have like 8 pages on a spreadsheet. So like, yeah, if they sold one part, that was showing up somewhere.
Right. In a world in which you didn't get the whole car back and maybe it was just like people for whatever reason destroyed it or whatever, would that have ever given you closure? Like if like obviously the miracle is you just got the car back and it's pretty much the same car and there's not that much damage. You know, I think you said there was like 10k damage or something, you know, but in the context of the car, that is nothing. You know, it's like a best case scenario. It's kind of miraculous you got it back like this. Do you ever wonder what it would have done to you if it had just been completely fucked up and you've been at square one or you're starting over again?
I wouldn't have stopped looking until we found something. I think the closure is the right word for it. I would have looked in every lake and every woods, even to find the ball of metal that was left of it. Like we even found like a crusher in the woods at one point. We were like, check the paint. Is there any fresh paint on any of those crushed cars? Like, it would have sucked, but at least I would have known like, all right, I know what you bastards did with it. And that would have been enough for the police to find someone. But if it never came back, I would have been pissed. But I was prepared for that. Like I was actually mentally, because I remember the day it was stolen. Like Red Eye was at the event for the qualifier when we were in Bucharest for PGL, and I said straight up, I said, I've never seen that again. He goes, yeah, it's probably good you tell yourself that now. And that's all I was doing. I was just telling myself that so that when it happened, it wasn't like a big shock to me. But I think I would have looked. Even if someone had called me and said, hey, I burned the fucking thing, I know where it is, and told me, I would have gone and looked because I would have wanted to see it. Because like I would have wanted to say, right, there it is. We can all go to bed now. But if I had thought there was any chance at all that it was out there driving on a road or a racetrack somewhere, I wouldn't have stopped looking.
Right. People always joke. I mean, I would probably say something similar that like once you've spent enough time on the internet and seen enough people, like, especially if you get any sort of mini internet fame and people are replying to you and giving you their opinions, you just lose all your faith in humanity. Like it's not that you become a complete arsehole. You do that as well separately. But, you know, it's like simultaneously what gives you the reason to is you just get that many people who are arseholes to you. You just think, even though it's not true, you just think, everyone's just being an arsehole. Fuck them all, you know, right? The reason I give that caveat is I know the CS community and the esports community, and not everyone is going to be lovely and be like, it's such a shame we've lost your car, which is clearly your pride and joy and you put all your money into, you know. There's some people are going to find that hilarious. Some people who are 14-year-olds or they're just, something's a bit fucked up in their life. Yeah, exactly. Right? Did that get to you, that people were kind of like fucking with you a bit as well? Or as you say, even making mad implications like you're the one who stole it and it's all the crime that you've done. Yeah. Even worse, you know that's not even the case.
That didn't bother me because I understood that most people didn't understand the insurance. That didn't bother me until a guy by the name of Bill Caswell, apparently, who I never knew before this. He's a big journalist. He posted on Jalopnik in the comments being like, this is insurance theft. And even in the comment section on Jalopnik, people were like, dude, you're a fucking idiot. Like, clearly it's not. But that triggered me. Like, you're a journalist. You know how this works. And you're still going to accuse me of it? And I wrote back, like, super cocky. Like, you should probably look up something about esports, you fucking dick, so you can learn about stuff. Like, I was pissed. Okay. Like, and I, like, even I, like, wrote that and was like, probably shouldn't have done that. But, like, I was, that one got to me because it was like, that guy knows better. And he has influence in the car world. So now he could, like, actually turn all of those people on me. And, like, then that would have been, like, thankfully that didn't happen, but that one did bother me too. And I even told Jalopnik because like they titled it very, I guess it's, I don't know, you're a journalist, maybe you can speak to this, but they said like esports caster claims someone stole his race car. And then they said like apparently found, like it was like the wording you've done there, you've set me up for this. Like you've clearly put me on the spot in that regard. So I wasn't too thrilled with it, but at the same time, it was all good coverage because it got people looking and made people aware. So I couldn't really hate it entirely, but the Caswell one did. The other one on Twitter, obviously, it didn't bother me, but I was not impressed because I kind of expected it. Was like, I think Don Hasey made a post being like, haha, I got your car, asshole. And I was like, yeah, not surprised. You're just an idiot. And then I think the one maybe you're going to get to is the Monte Cristo one. where the link on the front of the bumper was Sadokist.com. It was supposed to be .ca, which is what I owned. And even then the website wasn't up. But they put .com on it, and I just thought, whatever, we'll leave it there. Eventually I'll get the website done. And then during the theft, someone bought the website, and then Monte Cristo was like, oh, it's a broken link. Happy Canada Day, by the way. And I was like, dude, fuck you. My car was just stolen. Like, what are you trying to pull here? And even Jason and everyone in the green room at the time was like, whoa, like, I can't believe he tweeted that. And he since backtracked on it, being like, oh, I was trying to let you know in case anyone wanted to give information, da-da-da-da. And I was like, it just came off really snide.
Was it the Happy Canada part that made it seem?
I think that made it worse. Yeah, okay. If he had just said, it's a broken link, like, whatever, sorry to hear about your car, that sucks. But the way he was like, oh,
it sounds like it was the tone more than just what he said, right?
Exactly. And it was like, yeah, Happy Canada Day, the way you, like, obviously it's not a Happy Canada Day. Why are you even fucking saying that? And like, I don't care about the fucking website at this point. I just like want people to know the car is gone. So I was like, my initial tweet was like, what the fuck is wrong with you? Like, why would you say that? And then he was like, oh, I just wanted, like, in case anyone wanted to put information there, da-da-da. I was like, that sounds like a backtracking excuse, like post-fabricated if I've ever heard it. But I was like, oh, cool, whatever. Sorry, a little edgy right now. And then we left it at that. And then obviously that later blew up into controversy between us during Overwatch. But yeah, that one kind of bothered me, but none of them made me as angry as the Bill Casimel one. That one was like, dude, you're a card journal. You've seen this happen a million times and you're going to sit here and accuse me, like, fuck you.
Right, before we move on, since we're doing all the racing stuff at the moment, I thought a good way to make it actually have like a positive story within this, because some of this is pretty dark, is one of the coolest things I forget as an outsider you must have been able to do in esports was this year when you got through working with G2 to do that like virtual racing thing where you basically met your favorite race driver of all time,
like,
right?
My hero in a lot of ways. Like, that guy influenced my entire teenage emotions based on how he was performing. Yeah, I met Fernando Alonso. I actually, before that, through OJ, did World's Fastest Gamer because he couldn't do it. And it was a company he'd worked with before. Interviewed Jensen Button. Then I met Fernando Alonso. I became friends with one of the greatest sim teams, probably the greatest sim team in the world, Team Redline. And through them, I'm now like really good friends. He's only like 18, but like I played PUBG with him yesterday. Probably played PUBG with him again today. Lando Norris, who's going to race with McLaren next year. He's basically replacing Stoffel Van Dorn, who was Alonso's teammate. And yeah, like now I like know all these guys. It's super, super cool for me. Like some of the stories I've heard, like the internal stuff that you don't know in the public, same as Counter-Strike. It's like so fascinating to know like the inner workings of like F1 and stuff. So yeah, that's one thing that like, building the car was part of the reason, like, I wanted to use it for promotion. Just like, I obviously showing, hey, I'm in esports. By the way, I'm in racing. It's a great connection for that kind of stuff. But just esports in general to put me in a position where like I got to meet Fernando Alonso. If you told me that 10 years ago, I'd have been like, yeah, whatever. But like, yeah, totally. Got to interview him, hung out with him for like 10 minutes. There's a hat. I don't know how much you have in frame, but that hat right there is his like 2005 hat. Pulled that out to get him to sign it. And he was like, whoa, like 2005, dude, that's really cool. And I was like, yeah, I got that in Canada. And that year, because he like Spain, he'd blown up and he was winning the championship. You could not get his merchandise outside of Spain because it was all sold out. And I spent 6 months tracking that hat down and paid like way more money than I should have for it. So when I told him that, he was like, dude, I'll absolutely sign this. He was like, that's so cool. So that was like our little moment. And like for me, I was just like a kid. I was like, this is so cool. So yeah, definitely led to like wicked opportunity in that way. And I'm like super grateful for it.
Okay, right. Because the reason why I wanted to bring that in here is because we have to dial it back a little bit for something to do with the car scenario, which I set it up for this, which is when we did get to PGL Krakow, the major, this was a scenario where, I mean, I don't know how much people know publicly. I don't know if you've ever talked about this, but as far as I know, this was when you legitimately thought about what maybe it's time to quit esports, right? And obviously the timing, it has to in some sense be influenced by some of the things with the car as well as other things, right? So what's going on there? Like, why did you get to that point?
So go back to the 2016 mentality things and the death of camaraderie, whatever. That was kind of like a wave that we were all so busy we never dealt with. And I also said in part one, we aren't very good necessarily at
like addressing things when they
happen. Addressing things, talking about them when we should, airing it out, whatever you want to say. And it just was all a snowball going downhill. And a lot of it was me projecting onto them, perhaps that, you know, I was unhappy or I thought they thought something of me, therefore I acted that way back to them, whatever. Everyone was at wit's end. I forget what it was that led to it. We were in the Jewish Quarter in Krakow, which is a really cool historic area with a bunch of bars. And I happened to just meet up with the other guys after drinking all day. And I was still really angry. And I think people were kind of like resentful at the fact that I was angry in Cologne and being very difficult. I think some of them understood it and some of them didn't with the car. But we got into another petty argument over, I don't even know what it was. Chad wouldn't even like talk to me because at the start of the event, he was going on like Henry and I were saying like, oh, Valve should deal with the players this way. And he was going like, well, no, this is the way they want to do it. And we were like, no, we get that's what they want to do. We just think they should do it this way. And it led to like a stupid feud that shouldn't even happen. So Chad wasn't even like talking to me. And I walked by him and he like pushed me like, cause I like, it was like, I was trying to get to the bar and he was there and he like refused to move and kind of like pushed me back. And I just looked at Jason and said like, put your fucking dog on a leash. And that like blew up. Which is a typical me line, right?
Okay.
Like, and Chad was just like, can't believe I said it. Jason was like, what the fuck is wrong with you? We were all really drunk. I went aside and I just was like, dude, honestly, I've had enough. After this event, I'm going home. It's the player break. Like, I just had the car stolen and returned. I'm not even home to see it. I don't see any of my family. Fuck this. I'm done. And I was dead serious. Like, I was like, I've had enough. I'm not happy. I've been unhappy for the last few months about things. More stressed than I needed to be. And I thought, I'll just go home and go back to photography and things will be great. I'll go find my little utopia. And I remember leaving the bar that night and Jason was like really upset apparently when I left about it because he thought like he pushed me to that level, which it wasn't him alone. And apparently like he had to be like, he sat aside and was like, people were talking to him about it and stuff. Like he was genuinely upset. And here's how drunk we were. I lost my phone that night. And the next morning, Faflaren woke up to an alarm and only realized that it was my phone because there was a picture of my dog on it. Like, he took my phone and didn't even know. Like, we were that level that night. So, like, all of us were, like, overreacting for that reason.
Sure.
But I went back to the hotel and I was telling people, like, yeah, this is probably going to be my last event. Like, I was pretty serious about it. And then I remember Smiths, for whatever reason, like, Smiths and I weren't close, barely talked. Yeah, and I just said it to him and I just started like crying. I just started like literally like tearing up. And he was like, you all right, dude? And I was like, I thought I was. And then I sat down and I got like super emotional, which obviously drew attention for those drinking at the hotel to me. And Sendler was actually one of the ones that came over and we had like a big lengthy discussion about it because he was also going through the transformation of potentially going to Overwatch at this point, and knew that there was kind of some community hate toward him. And he was on the way out and we were talking about it and how to manage it, whatever. And we even jokingly said like maybe we should just be a duo, like we'll just try something new and change the scenery. And yeah, like I thought I was completely okay with it until then. And then even the next day, which we were still in the event, I had Henry and Tom Newman, because Tom was part of Dropthebomb still at the time and was still shooting the SK stuff during that event. I had them up to my hotel room and we were just talking because we were kind of like a little rat pack. And I just said like, I'm not happy. I don't care about the money and that I won't make as much. I would rather be happy at home. And Henry was really, didn't say much, but you could tell he was like, he could see the sincerity in it and he was really worried. And he didn't know what to say and was pretty quiet about it. Tom was like, honestly, like, I'm not surprised. You've been miserable for 2 months about stuff. And the car thing was just like the final fucking straw to like put me over the edge. And yeah, I was done at that point. And I even told the DreamHack Masters, which was coming up next, and ESL Pro League, I think, was starting again in September after the player break. I told them, don't rely on me being there. Don't book my flights yet. Talk to me when the time comes and I'll see if I'll be there. And I went home and I shut off everything, social media, Twitter, Facebook, boom, it was down. And I just sat for like 2 weeks and thought like, can I do this? Can I not be a part of that world anymore? Can I move on? And ultimately, I made the decision that I wasn't ready to fully let go of it, that I needed to make changes myself, and that I needed to just not care as much at events. Just go do my job, shut up, have fun, move on, go back to the hotel. If the green room wasn't great, just get out of there. Try and be a little more positive about the events. And so I went to Masters. It was fine. I actually, despite, a month before having that argument with Chad, casted a game with him because Henry was sick. And despite that we weren't very social before or after the game, during it, we were both professional and did a good job. And I thought, yeah, I can treat this more as a job and less as my entire life, and I can carry on with it.
In this scenario where this all happened, for the timeline of people, as we said, this is around like Cologne, going into PGL Krakow of 2017. Then you have the player break after Krakow, if people remember. And then we had those other tournaments at the end of the year. And then obviously we come into this year, everything's going fine, the tournament scene's settled down again. And around your birthday was when you did this stream where you did this stream where it was just like, what was even the premise? Because I don't remember you even announcing you were going to do this.
I wasn't.
Randomly. Did you even stream much back then?
No, and I wasn't going to stream that night. It was in this room. It was my laptop was set up behind me on a different table. My friend was over. So it's coincidentally, I'd actually said to everyone, like, I'm probably going to not drink much after my birthday. That'll be my last night drinking, because I was trying to get in shape with the hopes of doing a 12-hour race this summer, where I was probably going to have to do about 6 hours of driving, which in a race car is fucking exhausting and very physical. Like, you got to remember the suspension travels like nothing. It's super stiff. You're in there's no cushioning on the seat. You're belted into it. You're sweating it out. So I was like, I have to get in shape if I'm going to do that. Otherwise, I'm going to pass out in the car or just not be on my game. So I was like, I'm going to stop for 2 months and get in shape. That's like the irony of the whole thing. I guess we'll talk about the incident and then we'll go to the backstory. So I went out drinking that day for my birthday, went to meet some friends at one bar. Then I went to dinner, went to another bar. All in all, I think I was drinking for 16 hours. And we were at another little party with some other people. And then we came home and we were going to go to bed. And I said to Trevor, I was like, and you've now met Trevor at New York this year. I said, Datch, I said, let's play a few games of PUBG. And we were winning every game. We were killing it. I was like, we should stream. This is going so well. And at this point, that's the worst idea in the world. I'm already super drunk. And we just say, yeah, let's stream. So we fire up the stream. And then it's going well, even for the first, I don't know, I think it was 3 hours that we were streaming before the incident happened. But we're getting more and more drunk because we start saying oh, every time we die, we'll do a shot of tequila. And we went through, I think, a quart of tequila between the two of us.
By the way, one question I have that's vaguely humorous before we get to the rest of it, which is obviously depressing, is why did you do that part where you said guys, I'm not drunk at all. This is just me. Anything I say on the stream is me. That part is almost like you would go back in time, setting yourself up to look as bad as possible.
It's kind of true when you... I don't know. Ask any drunk guy if they think they're drunk, right? Sure. Why do people drink and drive? No, I'm not drunk. I can drive. And obviously, not that's something I don't condone. But no one's going to admit, yeah, I'm super loaded, guys. I'm being an idiot.
Sure.
Right now. That's just common drunk behavior. And anyone who says oh, he says he wasn't drunk, he wasn't. Okay, I'm an idiot for saying I wasn't drunk, but clearly, if you'd watch the stream, you could see us we did it off camera because Twitch rules, but you could tell we were smashing shots of tequila the whole night. So, yeah, I don't know. I think it was me trying to justify people being oh, you're drunk, mate, go to bed. And I was like, no, I'm not drunk. Shut up.
Okay.
I don't know. Anyway, things were going really, really well. And then I say at some point oh, we'll do an AMA to get more viewers. I was just trying to bait viewers in. And it gets to the point where, I don't know, you can tell it's kind of going south. We're getting a little more aggressive, a little more edgy and belligerent. And we're swapping back and forth. So my laptop sucks to play on. So I said to Trevor, I'll play one game on my PC, then I'll switch to the laptop. You can play on the PC. He was on the PC when the question came in that was something along the lines of and I don't even know who asked it. This is something that people have to remember and don't conveniently when they want to incriminate me. He said, yo, this guy in your chat, or he may have said the username and I didn't hear it. He said, this guy in your chat says, what's it like to be a shit caster that's past your prime? And I was over here and I was like, well, if you're going to ask me a question like that, I'm going to give you an equally sarcastic, trolly answer. And that's when I did the if you think I'm past my prime, I'm the best, that I'm at 50%, whatever. And I don't know what in my head said, say this. And then I was like, I'll drive the point home. And I said, you fucking... And I remember even in my head, right, carry on. And that's the drunkenness in me. If I, first off, I was sober, probably wouldn't have said it. I don't know, maybe I was irate enough in a certain situation that maybe it blurts out again because I can't really say as to why it did to begin with. But that's when I should have just said, right, that's enough. We're shutting the stream off. But in my head, I was like, no, it's fine. We'll just play it off like it was nothing and we'll keep going. And yeah, I tried to delete the notifications of it. I deleted the notification of the clip. It already was archived, obviously, because it hit Twitter immediately. And that's when... And I assume this guy was probably with Don Hasey, was already in the chat. That's when Don showed up again. And obviously I had my personal issues with him. And at that point, I'd swapped back over to this PC because I realized oh shit, it's about to get real. Things are about to get weird and wild and in a bad way. So I jumped on here because chat blew up. Then obviously the viewership went up when it hit Reddit. I still don't know why the Reddit mods, I guess I can appreciate them trying to protect me, but like, I don't know why they deleted everything, because in some ways shouldn't have been. It should be out there. I said it. And secondly, it made it way worse. And then like, so all of Reddit showed up, and then it was just a catastrophe from there on. And like, I should have just shut the stream off, obviously, but didn't. And yeah, that's where it led us.
What was the actual fallout for you behind the scenes? Like, for example, if like 6 months earlier, you're thinking of quitting anyway, did part of you think, maybe that's it? Like, what's the point in trying to come back from this? Just quit entirely. Was there ever actually the intimation from any of the tournament organisers, like, hey, maybe this is it for you? Like, unless this somehow turns around in terms of how it looks to the public, maybe we can't work with you. What was the situation like that?
So there's a couple of things to talk about on that one. We'll get to the DreamHack one, but the immediate aftermath was the next day I woke up. My room's directly through the wall that I'm staring at. I was over there in bed. Trevor was here. The interesting thing as well is like my brother, I won't say who some of the people I was playing with were, but there was other people that could have been implicated far worse than I was in the stream that people didn't realize were there, thankfully. My brother knew it was going south. He was playing with us. He was trying to call Trevor's to literally unplug my computer. But Trevor had passed out already and his phone was going off, and I went over and shut off the ringer. Like, that's how close it was to being saved at some points. Like, obviously the first incident had already happened, but like, yeah, nothing made it better. I woke up the next day and on my phone, like it was my birthday, and there was a bunch of WhatsApp messages. The first one was from Jason being like, hey man, let me know if you need anything today. And I was like, oh, that's kind of nice of him to say on my birthday. The second one was from Yanko being like, hey man, keep your head up. You're going to be all right. And I was like, that's a weird thing to say on my birthday. And then the third one was like, you have to deal with this immediately. And I forget who it was. And I was like, oh fuck. And that's when I clued in like, shit. So I instantly Googled my name. It was like everywhere at that point. And my email had a few different emails from different tournament organizers, but surprisingly, most of them were positive. There was a couple quotes that were going to go public and never did, because the Score Esports was going to do an article on it, but then realized like there's so many hit pieces on it that there wasn't much point. And tons of people reached out for me for a statement, and obviously my first response was no comments. I had to deal with this myself, and I didn't want any of my words to be taken out of context before I had a chance to actually say what was needed to be said in my apology, etc. But most of the tournament organizers were like, hey man, you're an idiot. You are absolutely on the hook for this and you need to take some time off, but we'll support you. And you've always been, diligent in your work when you're at our events, and we've never had a problem with you. So deal with this, and, we'll get back to you in the future for work. So I knew that like I had the option of going back so long as I dealt with it correctly and I didn't make the situation any worse. But there was a few stipulations on that. Obviously, the Twitch ban came in for a month, which overlapped with Marseille. And DreamHack at the time I'd already announced it and was even talking to Twitch like, no, can he still be on our broadcast or not? And we came to the conclusion even before Twitch ruled that like I absolutely couldn't be, that it wasn't in the best interest for me or for them. It was too soon. It was just going to be bad publicity all around. I didn't want to be there mentally. I just thought like, I'm not going to be able to handle the hate very well and the heat from the situation that early. So we agreed to just forego on that one. And obviously Vince came in. But you're right. There was a moment when I thought like, am I going to recover from this to a point where I'm comfortable again? Am I going to be okay with the response? Is it worth it for me to deal with the shit that I'm going to get? Is this more reason for me to just walk away and, say, tail between my legs? Yeah, I fucked up, whatever. I'm going to move on with life. And ultimately, I think one of the decisions I came to is that I can't end on that note. Not after how hard I worked. Not after how much I put into it. And that I needed to prove to myself that I could face it head on. That like because I don't make excuses for it. Like I fucked up royally and I know better. It's not like I needed some history lesson on racism. Like I get it. But I needed to make sure that was clear, and I couldn't just curl into a ball and, delete Sadokist from my life and go back to being Matt on that note. So I knew that I had to face it head on, and that's ultimately, what I did.
Okay. So then obviously the section of the interview we're moving into now is basically starting to wrap up. So now it's time to talk about some of the things that didn't happen yet, the future. What's the concept here? Where are we going here? Because there's a lot of threads throughout the interview so far. Like, you could have done other things in esports, as you alluded to then. I mean, maybe other people didn't pick up on this, but when you said that part about, Alex from doing hosting has been on camera a lot more, and obviously, by the way, hosting generally, it's not as game specific, so once you become a very good host, as Alex, Red Eye, etc. have shown us, you can transition that skill set to be the best in another game where you maybe don't know the game as much because your skill set's better than the guy you're competing against. So clearly, that is, if I was to design someone's career and they told me, right, I want to do esports for a while, I'm going to love it for, say, 5 years, but one day I might want to move to something else. Maybe that would be like television or sports, something else, but I'd want to use my same skill set. I agree with you. I'd probably tell them be a host, mate. Like, be the guy who brings it all together, learns all the sort of camera stuff. You've shown you've got the reel for it, and then you could transition off into that. We know that's a real job, and in fact, we've seen people go the other way, trying to come into esports doing that. People like OllieJ, etc., who have made their way in. So, is this actually something that you think about, like what the one day how you make your move out of esports, and if it will be to some destination like this still?
That even ties into like the previous topic, which we were pretty brief on. Like again, that hindered a lot of it. So I have been, for hosting reasons or whatever else, I was talking to. Not in any serious capacity, but like the early talks with Formula E, which is Liberty Media, and Formula One management to do potentially some F1 esports stuff. F1 esports, admittedly, I wasn't that far along in talking with, but like those conversations just ended after the incident.
Sure.
That was where there was actually more repercussions, was outside of it. I guess, I don't know. I think for me, that's where 2019 and the future, that's where I need to diversify. I want to do as many different games as possible. I'll even cast Dota. I did one Dota game in my life, like way back in like 2011, but I'd love to do like a minor event. I don't want to go to like a big event and take anyone's job, but I'd like to do it just to do it and see how it goes. And I've done some PUBG. I did 2 PUBG events already. I'd love to host anything. Yeah, throw it at me. Like Forza was after me to do some stuff last year. It just didn't work with my schedule. But next year, I want to create some space for stuff like that. And I think that in 2019, it's going to be all about gaming for me. It's not just going to be about Counter-Strike. So any esports competition, any gaming competition, like let's host a panel at PAX. Let's host a discussion panel. Let's talk about RPG games. I love Final Fantasy games, always have. Like let's talk about Horizon Zero Dawn and all that stuff. Like let's I don't know. For me, I think it's really important to celebrate gaming for what it is. I think I don't know. Again, it doesn't have to be esports. I just think that doing more of that stuff puts you on more people's radar. And that's where the investors coming in or new people coming in are going to say, hey, that guy seems like he's doing quite a bit. And that's where opportunity is going to stem from. And I don't know that my goal is so much to transition anymore. It's certainly not in the immediate future. I think Hockey Night in Canada would be cool when I get to be maybe like 35, 40, like 5-6 years from now onward to the 40s and into a longer career when I want a family and I want to be in one location for longer. Because that is the benefit of a TV studio, right? If you're in one place for longer, you can actually have a stable life. Sure. Like, obviously, I'm single and it's hard to find a girlfriend who's going to ever date my lifestyle right now and put up with me being gone, let alone having a family. So I think that's on hold, but I don't know. I just want to have fun again. I just want to do as much as I can and be a part of this community and like a broader concept and do more than one thing. And even if I'm super successful in casting, and CS will always be the priority, and casting CS should be the priority, I don't want to be in that pigeonhole anymore. I want to be able to mess around and do some other stuff. Even going back to doing like the DreamHack tours I used to do, not tours like France tours, but like with Fragbite, when I did the tour of the venue, stuff like that at other places, like just something a little different, a little more fun, a little loosey-goosey. Blast has been good for that. They've been trying to put people in a few different roles and do a few different things. To just showcase that the talent is talented and can do more than what they're known for. And that's kind of the goal, I guess, is just like broaden the horizons in a lot of ways and see where it goes.
Are you someone, since people might know, I alluded to it at the beginning of the interview, you didn't actually come from Counter-Strike. You were in Call of Duty and you were doing Tribes, etc. And so I always wonder with people from other games, this is the reason I personally wasn't that shocked that Semler went to Overwatch, because I knew he came from all these other games that had nothing to do with Counter-Strike. He's clearly a general gamer, and it just happened that Counter-Strike was one that he liked at a certain point in time. It, matched up with his career, etc. And for a while, obviously, he rode the wave of it being a really big game. So it makes sense to me as to why someone like that in his position might choose to go to another other game instead. Are you someone where Counter-Strike as a game, does it still capture you? Like, do you like to still watch all the top teams playing? Do you ever get burned out by the game itself?
Oh, yeah. I think the look, it's not that I'm like, it depends. Someone asked me this actually like last night when I was in someone's stream chat. And they said, like, do you ever get sick of watching Counter-Strike? Online matches right now are absolute dog shit. Yeah. There's times at Pro League when I'm like, I can't believe I'm casting this right now. Or even worse, I can't believe I just flew home from Chicago, got straight off the plane, walked into this studio, can barely stay awake, and I'm casting this shit game right now. Like, there's times when even the teams are so burnt out that you can tell they don't care. So how am I supposed to sell it like it's an important game? Like, there are definitely those times. Saturation's a word. I know a lot of people hate it. It's a buzzword for some. It's definitely true. I think it depends on the context of it. Like, I'm not to the point where I'm going to jump to another game right away and abandon Counter-Strike. I've always been a Counter-Strike fan, even when I played COD. At the start of when I came into this, I felt like I didn't belong, but now I feel like I have my place here. Like, I felt like the outsider for the first year or two. Like, I am not a CS purist. I am invading people's territory. But now I feel like I belong here. And as much as I get a little bit burnt out and worn down, I think things are getting better with things like the Grand Slam coming in, the competitive scene right now. A lot of people say, oh, Astralis is killing everyone. Well, that to me makes it exciting because they're doing it as a very professional team, and that's going to put pressure on others. Going to an all-LAN Pro League addresses a lot of the issues. It also frees up a little bit more space, but it ultimately for me is finding the balance that I need to make sure either it's doing another game or getting my mind off Counter-Strike every now and then so that we don't hit those waves that lead to the Krakow incident where I'm like, I'm done. This is it. Like, I've done so much CS. Because, yeah, we can all get sick of it. Even Henry, like, who loves the strategic game, he'll look at teams, and you can hear it in his casting. He'll go from being like, oh, what a sick play from so-and-so to, wow, that guy's really shit. Why is he doing that still? And that's when you can tell, like, okay, we've done enough lately. Perhaps time for a little break.
Okay. Right, at the end of the interview, then, do you have a final message or some topic you want to hit at the end as we close up here?
No, like I said, we were kind of brief on the N-word thing. I think enough's been said about that in the history of it. The big thing for me was that I had to review what led me to say it rather than just saying it. And obviously I've done a lot of that. And that's led me to the position I'm in now where, I have to focus more on me. And that was something that I was becoming aware of for a while. But, now as a group, camaraderie is starting to come around a bit. I think everyone's realized we've all hit our bottoms, some lower than others, as is the case with mine, perhaps. We're doing a fitness challenge, right? We've got like Anders in on it, me, Chad, Henry. We're just doing stuff to try and like keep our minds active outside of the game. And we're starting to be a little more friendly in that way. And, that's important. I think the lifestyle is very important. So I think 2019, like I say, is going to be very different from other years. Even if I'm just as busy, it's just going to be different in terms of where my headspace is at, trying to do other games. Maybe there'll be frequent breaks. There's a good chance I'm not going to start up again until mid-February, which is a longer Christmas break than I'll have ever had in my life. I don't know. Yeah, I just want to have fun again. I think that's the goal. I think we're all in a pretty good position. I think Counter-Strike's very stable. I think that we've hit sort of a plateau. Sure, we aren't at rapid growth rates anymore, but I think that's really good because we can all settle in now, and we're not outgrowing our own I guess capacity in terms of business and the tournaments and teams and stuff. So we can really start to lay into the structure and get things really good for everyone and the community as well. So I'm excited for where it goes, I think.
This video was supported by Dean Tanglis, Andreas Snazore Westerlund, James Harding, NateDOhDoubleG, OllieJ, Tobias Bernasconi, Travis Greb, Tristan Jones, Daniel Olivar, Jiangheng Lu, and special thanks, as always, goes out to Jerky's Minion, one of my OGs. Do you want to suggest a topic or a guest for my content? Maybe you want to ask me a question. I have a monthly AMA. Perhaps you want teasers for who the next guests are on my upcoming talk shows. Maybe you want to be part of my monthly discussion where my top patrons talk to me. Well, put your money where your mouth is and join the Scrilluminati today at the description box link for Patreon.